Today we talk about the absolute natural right to pursue happiness. It's supposed to be for everyone. That is next. Hey, welcome back to the Farah Show. It's great to have you with us. I hope you're doing really well. Today, we talk about the right to the pursuit of happiness. You know, there's no other country that's been founded upon this right. It was presented as one of the three absolute rights, a natural right. These rights are non-negotiable. They come from God. If you don't believe in God, they come from nature. They are logical and cannot be violated. The three freedom rights are represented as pillars in our discussion. They can be seen from a distance and respected and even admired. This pillar of freedom has a unique beginning. It presumes that government has accepted its limited role, and it became known the world over as the American dream. This pillar presumes that government has accepted the social contract that it serve its citizens, not rule over them. So in previous episodes, I described this foundation as your 7 citizen mandates. The Constitution was a social contract that was based on the explicit or implicit understanding of these mandates. Here's a quick review. Number 1, government shall be limited. Number 2, government shall obey its own laws. Wouldn't that be great? Number 3, government shall apply all laws equally. That'd be great too. Government shall protect the rights of the individual. Government shall support economic freedom. Government shall be governed under the consent of the people, and government shall honor freedom rights as preeminent over all others. In other words, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Based on that foundation, the concept of granting all of its citizens the unrestricted right to the pursuit of happiness deserves a bit of examination. I mean, how did they come up with that idea? First, let's return to one of the scholars that the founders studied, and that's Thomas Aquinas. He wrote Lex Naturalis, or Natural Law, way back in the late 1200s. He synthesized natural law theory from others before him, including the Greek philosophers. For example, he included Aristotle's 4 principles of natural law, that law has moral purpose, that not all people are good, and education alone doesn't make them good, that laws can ensure some good behavior, and that using reason, people can develop their greatest potential. He also included some of Cicero's ideas, but Aquinas was a Christian, and he synthesized natural law most heavily from his Christian worldview. He incorporated Augustine's work from the late 300s, and he used references from the Old Testament and the New Testament. And in Aquinas' work, he details the reason natural law is provable. Since God makes people as the crescendo creation event, and since both male and female are made in the image of God, there's something special to being human. This creation event is not only the final creation event, but the creation event that's special on several levels. God does that every single time someone gets born. Every human is created in his image. And that is special. Humans can create things. Dolphins are smart, but they can't create in the same way. They don't make things that operate and function at a high level that can help them make things and get places. We integrate materials and labor and incorporate deliberate design and use machines that we made to help us make things or go places. We can travel faster than our physical body. Other animals haven't created that travel capacity. The list is endless on how humans are special, but humans are special. Humans are so special that they are entrusted with stewardship of all the animals and all the resources of the earth. Humans are not equal to your cat. They're special. So Aquinas reasoned that since we can reason, and since reason is a deposit from God, he's making a deposit on you when he creates you, when you're made, something that only God could have given to us. And since he gives it to all of us, regardless of our volitional desire to worship him, all humans have an equal right to an intrinsic, basic set of rights. No human should ever try to remove those basic rights from another human, for crying out loud. So you move down the road of history a few hundred years later, You're starting in the 1200s, you're ending up in the mid 1500s. You mix in some Martin Luther, you got John Calvin with the Age of Enlightenment on top of that, and you get what's called a social contract or social contract theory. And this is the idea of government having a humble view of itself. I laid this out in the first 4 episodes of this series. And effectively what the notion of it is the citizen mandates. It was a social contract theory that challenged the divine right of kings. That was the horribly wrong idea that the king could rule over people just as he wished. These ideas led to the concept of our republic. The U.S. is the biggest modern nation to institute a republican form of government. But it's not the first. The Romans had a form of it. The Dutch rebelled from the King of Spain in the late 1500s and formed a republic in 1588. It was called the Act of Abjuration. They claimed that King Philip had violated the natural rights of the citizens, no kidding, and forfeited his right to rule over them anymore. But the U.S. was the first to start with the concept of the 3 freedom principles based on natural law to make the case for a representative and transparent form of government. Not a full democracy, a republic. Natural rights and natural law are often used interchangeably, and natural rights have since been used as the basis for the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948 by the UN, and the European Convention on Human Rights in 1953 by the Council of Europe. But back to the founders. The concept of natural rights is explicitly mentioned in the Declaration of Independence. Those who were not practicing Christians still believed that man could reason his way to agreement on these 3, the right to life, liberty, and property. But wait, we say life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. How do we get pursuit of happiness from the word property? Well, this development can be traced to the skinny and homely Englishman John Locke, and he lived from 1632 to 1704. Locke was a Calvinist, but mostly a curious and honest philosopher. He's famous for saying that he would throw away anything he wrote if it could be empirically proven false. Locke's guiding religious belief, as it pertains to political thought, was that male and female are created in the image of God. Scholars concur that his philosophy of freedom is derived from the Bible. He argued that since male and female were equal in value according to both the Old and New Testament, and that according to those same ancient writings, that people are, regardless of class and rank, equal in value, that a legit government needed to respect the people it governs and needs their consent to govern them. So from this platform, he further defined the idea of a republic. He stated that it should be understood in light of the governing principles of natural rights. First, you start with the absolute truth that humans have certain inalienable rights, and then you compel government to protect these rights. Government should never do anything to threaten the rights to life, liberty, or property. To pull this off, he argued, for 3 branches of government: legislative, executive, and judicial. He wanted them to provide a check against the other. So if the government was respecting these 3 rights, then it could make laws and the citizens would act reasonably towards the government. But all the laws have to treat all the people equally. You can't favor one section of the citizenry over another. And no law can violate natural law. In fact, if a law violates natural law, then he argued that the law could be overturned. And if that doesn't work, he argued that the government itself could be overturned. The whole system relies upon natural law. So this social contract would now have some formal structure in the form of a republic. Locke's ideas were used by reformers everywhere, especially in America during the struggle for independence from Britain. And what they were wanting is to demand constitutional government, the rule of law, and the protection of those individual rights, and to make the legal case for separating from Britain. At the end of the day, Locke promoted the idea that government power must be limited and that the authority of rulers should not be absolute, but should be checked. In John 16:89, 2 treatises of government, he argued that government should primarily exist to protect property. He defined property as 3 things: life, liberty, and estate. So your life and liberty speak to free expression and free movement. Your estate is you, what you own, how you earn, and how you spend. Locke gave a lengthy expose on this notion of property. It's really central to his political theory. You don't just have the free and clear title right to the fruit of your labor. You own you. You are your own private property. You own the right to yourself. No one can force you to engage in labor. They must negotiate with you and pay you an agreed upon amount. Now, we take it for granted today, but this was a profound change that enabled freedom. In another essay, he described the role of government as preserving the civil interest. And he defined the civil interest as life, liberty, health, the removal of bodily pain, and the possession of outward things. In another essay, he described the perfection of intellectual natural law as the pursuit of true and solid happiness. So there it is. The completion, the perfection of all the obvious truth that anyone with rational observation skills can ascertain is this ability to pursue something that's true and solid happiness. And this is a natural right, according to natural law, and kind of the epitome of it. No government can strip it from you. You own free and clear title to this transcendent right. And it's true, and it's solid. Those words actually mean something. So let's break this down. First, what is pursuit? And what did it mean to John Locke? Well, in the Calvinist tradition, pursuit was a level of defined activities over a long period of time. It included vocation and profession, but it also included education, recreation, and worship. The notion of pursuit was based on a deliberate plan that incorporated a disciplined set of activities that increased the odds of you accomplishing that plan. For example, in the ancient writings of Deuteronomy, there's a detailed description of how to plan for an elaborate vacation, no kidding, down to how to prepare for the travel, the food, and the wine with the whole family. So the concept of pursuit represents personal responsibility. It doesn't just come to you as an entitlement. You have to think about it and lay out a plan and prepare yourself and then implement your plan. That's pursuit. So now, if that's pursuit, what's true and solid happiness? That's a pretty broad thought. In the tradition of his worldview, happiness really is a result of just doing something well with a sense of purpose. It's the feeling of being pleased or happy. It's that emotional state that's characterized by these feelings of joy and satisfaction and contentment and fulfillment. But for him, it was connected to purpose. Happiness is the feeling that comes over you when you know life is good, but it's purposeful. When you feel safe and successful, you feel happy. So this country, this nation, is based on giving you a right to take the bull by the horns in pursuit of going and feeling happy as it pertains to purpose. Now, in the Jewish definition, the word simcha, it's service to God and it's also prosperity. How can you be any happier than knowing you are honoring the Almighty? And in some teachings, it also includes duty. You're of more use when you're happily serving God than when you're depressed. In Christian thought, joy actually has a deeper meaning. Happiness is connected to good circumstances and prosperity, but the real McCoy in the Christian idea is in the next life and in the joy of experiencing knowing Him in this one. So to be happy in this life, you must express virtue. This is where your actions and your habits are good because your mind, will, and your emotions have been transformed to be good as well. An unhappy life was described in different ways. For example, the ancient writings of Leviticus describe how taking on debt that you can't repay causes depression. The reader is exhorted to never be in a situation so bad that he would sell himself to pay off some debt. I mean, that's the epitome of losing your freedom. And a whole good chunk of Proverbs describes how to position your life toward a more prosperous and more freedom-giving outcome. So, for John Locke, influenced by all that, a true and solid happiness would have some endurance to it. It would not just be based on good circumstances. It would have more depth. It would require some form of a plan. The plan would require execution. It would not be winning the lottery and just living for yourself. It would be the culmination of effort that could achieve something of purpose. You remember Eric Liddell in the movie Chariots of Fire? It's a true story of this exceptional athlete. When his sister asks him why he is doing what he is doing, he was able to say with confidence, "When I run, I feel God's pleasure." That's the idea of pursuit of happiness. So, this true and solid happiness is the ability for you to converge. That's where your skills and your abilities match what you do for a living, and you do it for more than the financial rewards. Those are yours too. You earned those financial rewards, but there's more meaning to it. So, did the founders have all of this in their minds? Well, some argue that Jefferson didn't take the phrase pursuit of happiness just from John Locke. At minimum, he abbreviated that phrase. He left out true and solid. Jefferson and Adams, though, were concerned about a true democracy. They didn't want that. Adams wanted only property owners to be able to vote. He feared that those without any investment would have very little risk, and that person would just vote with his emotions. That person would not vote in the overall best interest of the country, and he would forget about and be willing to even give up his natural rights for some short-term gain. So part of the concept here at the Declaration stage, before the Constitution was written, was to include, or at least make room for some virtue. A happy and prosperous and virtuous character would be an exemplary citizen. And you need exemplary citizens to hold up a republic. There certainly is a case to be made that lesser-known philosophers could have also influenced Jefferson on his phrase, the pursuit of happiness. In The Religion of Nature by Wollaston, he argued that the truest definition of natural law was the pursuit of happiness, which is the practice of reason and truth. Now, his case for that was published 30 years after John Locke and well before the Declaration, 54 years later. So he could have looked at that. There was also the Principles of Natural Law in 1763 by the French guy Burle-Marquis, and he extolled the noble pursuit of true and solid happiness. He tied that to natural rights. Both of these guys could have influenced Jefferson, but with a slightly different use of words, they seem to basically express the same idea. It's a natural right for government to allow its citizenry to pursue happiness, and that's a good thing, and the epitome of natural law. Finally, on the Commentaries on Law by Blackstone in 1769, he published the following, and this is his quote. I merged a couple of things, taking out the longness of his quote, but these are his words. God has so intimately connected, so inseparably interwoven the laws of eternal justice with the happiness of each individual that the latter cannot be attained but by observing the former. In the end, the law of nature is one of obedience to God, and that is reduced to this one paternal precept, that man should pursue his own true and substantial happiness. So there's some effort, some pursuit, some involvement, some engagement, and some purpose. And that was only 7 years before the Declaration. So it could have been Blackstone that also influenced Jefferson. I think it's pretty obvious, though, that regardless of who the founders agreed with the most, that the absolute right to the pursuit of happiness was unanimously accepted. No one was against it. And they were against a lot of things. You know, from the first draft to the final draft, there were 86 changes, but no one touched the preamble. 100% agreement. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, if you talk to a guy today who believes in natural rights and natural law, that kind of an advocate, he'll look back and he'll credit the founders with this extraordinary foresight. Jefferson and Adams wanted to encompass economic freedom with purpose. Well, I think that might be true to an extent, but I really don't think they could have imagined how incredible the idea would become for so many people. They wanted responsible people engaged in a deliberate pursuit of a sky is the limit idea. But to think that there would be 22 million millionaires out of a population of 329 million people is astounding. And that's the case. Right now, we have 22 million millionaires. And that people from all over the world who achieve what they were hoping for, what they planned for, say they are living the American dream. And one thing that no one can deny is that the pursuit of happiness is the definition of the American dream. You can look it up. It's the national ethos of the US of A. It includes the ability to be treated equally under the law, and it grants you the freedom to reach for the stars. The American dream means you can come from anywhere and that life could be better for anyone who wants to pursue it. It's not a guarantee, but it's a robust thing that's based on bold invitation saying, come on in. If you want it, it's yours. The pursuit of happiness means that no matter what your birth or position, you can attain to whatever your heart's desire. You can break out of the tradition of your parents, or you can build a legacy upon their foundation. You're not repressed. You're not limited by your class or your skin color or your ethnicity. You know, there have always been skeptics of the American dream. And usually these are people who allocate just way too much time to making excuses. There have almost always been hardships that create enormous obstacles. In fact, in every previous generation that I've studied, they had difficulties, and in most of those cases, much more difficulties than we do. An example, the immigrants from the early 20th century who jumped into the publishing business, they started their ethnic newspapers, and the vast majority promulgated, without any apology, the American dream. You can define happiness, and you can organize a plan, and you can implement that plan, and you have the right to the pursuit of happiness. Here's a real-life example. In 1902, a 19-year-old young man had a mild case of polio. So to make the best of it, he started making some molasses chips. His mom taught him how to hand dip it. He went full bore into the candy-making business, got married young, and couldn't make enough money to make ends meet. So his wife divorced him, claiming a lack of support. A few years later, he got married again, this time to a racehorse owner who actually won the Kentucky Derby twice. They got married in 1910. In 1911, Frank started another candy company with his rich second wife. This company sold fresh candy wholesale, but went out of business. 9 years later, Mars relocated to his home state, Minnesota, and gave it another whirl. He's 37 now, and he's seasoned a bit. So he started Morrow Bar Company, and then later renamed it Mars Incorporated. He muscled through the Great Depression and turned it into a successful business. He moved the headquarters to Bakersfield, California. It was cheaper there, better weather than Minnesota. And most of Frank's success was during the Great Depression. In 1930, Frank created the Snickers bar, still in the top 3 best sellers of all candy bars, and the Three Musketeers bar. That's like number 6. He did that in 1932. He died of heart problems 2 years later, 1934, in the middle of his business booming and right in the middle of the Depression extending, kind of the depths of the Depression. So his son, from his first wife, his name is Forrest, he took over the company after Frank died. Now, Forrest developed M&M's and the Mars bar. And so he had merged all the candy bars together. Forrest also liked a popular milkshake, and he stuffed those ingredients into a candy bar, and he called it the Milky Way bar. You know what? They still sell 80 million of those candy bars per year. They advertised it as a chocolate malted milk in a candy bar. So the family transition was, well, it wasn't always smooth. In fact, there was quite a bit of drama, but they kept the drama to themselves. Nobody knew about it. And they didn't even admit that Forrest even worked at the company. That's kind of amazing. And they were very private about all the ownership, but they kept all the ownership too. Amazingly, 100% is still owned by the Mars family. Last year's sales, $45 billion. Forbes estimates that the family's combined net worth, $94 billion. They are the 6th largest privately held company in the United States. They operate under the umbrella of their 5 principles: quality, do it right; responsibility, be decisive; mutuality, benefit all the employees; efficiency, have maximum impact; and freedom. I thought that was interesting. Freedom, that's their 5th. They want to make their own decisions, be unrestricted by the motivations of others. That really caught my eye. A company basing one of its operating principles on freedom. So I looked up their more detailed explanation. What could this mean? Mars is one of the world's largest privately owned corporations, but it's a deliberate choice to stay private. Many other companies began as Mars did, but as they grew larger and required new sources of funds, they sold stock or incurred massive debt to fuel their business. To extend their growth, they exchanged a portion of their freedom. Mars believes that growth and prosperity can be achieved a different way, another way. Their strategy is to use their profit to grow with minimal debt, never too much to lose control, and then they reinvest in all the upgrades across all platforms to stay competitive. Their plan is to operate the business with freedom, the way they want to. They only diversify when they think they will excel at it, and they're not pressured by any external shareholders to go in a different direction. They don't feel great about it, they don't do it. Their operating structure is private ownership, period. This is how they remain free. They say that the nature of freedom demands that freedom's used responsibly, and their way of doing business allows them to remain free as a company and gives their team the freedom to innovate, act, and grow while achieving their goals. This creates the kind of environment in which they are all excited to work. Their private ownership, unanimity of purpose, and high ethical standards allow them to move quickly in exploring new ground, acting boldly in the face of competition, and taking risks wherever they are justified. Above all, their private ownership gives them the freedom to take a long-term perspective on making investments, building businesses, and providing for the well-being of their team. This spirit has driven Mars in the past and it remains the guiding force in the future. That's a quote. All those freedom expressions. So that was Mars Family's definition of the pursuit of happiness. That's how they achieved it. You can pursue happiness however you desire. It's your right. You can define happiness any way you wish, as long as it does not infringe on the rights of others to do the same. You may define happiness as more time in the arts, or you may love the competitive nature of business, or you may pursue volunteer service, or you can go after the whole kit and caboodle and do them all. You have no guarantees that you'll find it, but you are free to define it for yourself and to pursue it, to go chase it however you wish. And the essence of this pillar of freedom is that it's intended to be celebratory. It's not a root of any envy. If someone else achieves greatness, celebrate it. That keeps the pathway open for you. You have no upper limit to your aspiration just because someone else succeeded. You don't have to be famous or wealthy to be successful. But if you are planning and executing upon a plan to accomplish what you define as happiness, you are likely to be a more responsible and more exemplary citizen. If you achieve fantastic wealth, you can be an amazing giver. In fact, the metrics show that those who achieve some rendition of their pursuit of happiness are the most generous people on the planet. There's something about gratitude that enables creativity and it supports exceptional efforts. You have the right to go for it. The right to property protects what you have, but the right to the pursuit of happiness celebrates you and allows you to define what you can acquire, what you can build, where you choose to live, how you choose to make it happen, who you can serve, who you can help out, how you can make a difference. This is the essence of the pursuit of happiness, and it has become known as the American dream. So hold up the pillars of freedom. Defend your right to life. Promote your right to liberty. And execute your plan to your right to the pursuit of happiness, to your freedom. God bless you.
Hi, I'm David Farah. Thank you for listening to my dad's podcast, The Barry Farah Show, Culture Shift. Click subscribe now to be sure you don't miss an episode. Share this podcast with your friends on social media and give The Barry Farah Show your 5-star rating. See you next time.